Alright guys, welcome back to today's video. In today's video, we're looking at a Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump election prediction here for 2024. Now this video was actually made out of recommendation from some of my viewers. I posted on my community page for you guys what video you guys wanted next, and this is the one that came out on the top. So if you voted, I hope this was your option. If it wasn't, keep on watching this video. It's going to be very exciting. So let's take a look here at the race here, 4-270 here in the electoral map. So taking a look here at some of our safe states and likely states, lean and tilt states. Now, if you guys want to know how I categorize these states, if a state is safe, that means that a candidate will most likely win the state by 15 or more points. If a state is likely, then that means around 7 to basically 15 points, around that margin there. And then if a state is lean, then it's around, let's say, 3 to 7 points. So around that. 3 to 7 points. I would say about 4 to 7 points to be more exact for a lean state. And for a tilt state, it's basically anything under 1% to about 3%. So that's just how I categorize these states. So that way you guys aren't wondering why I'm giving certain states to certain candidates as being safe, likely, lean, or tilt. That just gives you a good idea of it. So taking a look here at where we're headed here, we're going to give the states right obviously in the middle of the country to either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. So we're going to give here obviously several of the states here which voted previously for Bill Clinton in the 1992 and 1996 election to Donald Trump. So those are some states that they want to give. We also want to give the states on the far extremities of the Electoral College and of America in general to the Democrats, considering their high population in several of their key cities there. So we're going to go ahead and give Illinois, which obviously has Chicago there, an extremely well-populated, densely populated area. We're also going to give New Mexico to the Democrats there, to Kamala Harris, considering the fact that it has voted Democrat in previous elections and votes for Democrats by an extremely large margin. We're going to go ahead also and give the state of Utah as being safe for Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump could win the state of Utah if he runs for re-election as being safe. Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana are states which I think that Donald Trump could win if he wins his party's respective nomination. I'm also going to give two of the congressional districts within the state of Maine as being safe for the Democrats. So we're going to give two congressional districts amounting up to 3 electoral votes there in the state of Maine. So taking a look here at where we are. We're taking a look here. We have Kamala Harris at 188 electoral votes, whereas we have Donald Trump at 114 electoral votes. Now, these are for some of the safe states. Let's take a look here at some of the polls here about where the country is viewing these two candidates and what a head-to-head matchup between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump would look like with regards to where the country is headed. Now, with regards to the polling data, we do not have polling data that much as on a state-to-state level because a lot of the polling on a state-to-state level, we do not have that polling due to the fact that Kamala Harris is likely not to run for president in 2024, considering the fact that she is running with President Biden for a re-election bid. Although that being said, we do have some general election polling, which is basically the entire country as a whole. We do not have state-to-state polling, but the general election polling can give us kind of a trend line of where we're headed for 2024 with regards to the election as a whole. So as we're looking at these polls here, Donald Trump has a commanding lead over Kamala Harris in a majority of the polls here when we look at them. If you take a look here at this array of polling data from Harvard Harris, Yahoo News, Rumsum reports. Rumsum reports are more towards the Republican side there, more leaning towards the right. Although we do have some Federalist polls here as well. We have Yahoo News polls. We have several polls here that we can take a look at here. But as you can see, there is an overall trend in these polls showing that Donald Trump does have a commanding lead: 6, 9, 7 points, 11, 10, 10 points ahead, 3 points ahead, 10 points ahead, 3 points ahead. We have a tie here. We have Kamala Harris ahead in one of this poll here, but most likely this is an outlier considering the fact that the majority of the polls here do show Donald Trump with the lead. We have Kamala Harris ahead here by 3 points and then up by 1 point. But again, those are just a few selected amount of polls. In the majority of the polls, Donald Trump does have the lead. So because of that, I'm going to give Donald Trump more states than I would compare if he were to do a face-off with Joe Biden. For the election prediction for Joe Biden, that video, I did a video for that a while ago. The link for that video will be in the description below. I actually did 3 videos over Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I think I did one a month ago, and then one I think 3 or 2 weeks ago, and then another one I think a week ago I did. So I'm going to be putting my most recent prediction in the link in the description below. But if you look at that video right there, and I recommend that you go and look at this right after this video is over, or you can go and look at it right now and come back to this video. But if you go back and look at that video, you can see I believe I go over some of the polling data. But if you go back to that video, you'll see that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are almost neck and neck in most of the polls. Whereas when it comes to Kamala Harris versus Trump rematch, you see that Kamala Harris is extremely in a much lower position. Now, that may be linked to her approval rating. So Kamala Harris's approval rating is not very good. Now, note that this video is being made as of October 19, 2023. So if you're watching this video a little bit later, things may have changed. Although if you're watching this video basically within a month or 2 months after this video is made, most of this information will be pretty relevant to the time in which you're watching this. So taking a look here at the favorability rating of Kamala Harris. As of October 17, 39% of registered voters, according to according to this article, have a favorable opinion of Kamala Harris, whereas 55% have an unfavorable opinion of Kamala Harris. That's a net difference of 16 points. So basically, you subtract the 15 from 39, and you get a net negative of 16 points. That obviously is not good. Having an approval rating of 39% is not where you want to be for re-election. Now let's take a look here at what incidents actually affected her approval rating. What happened that caused her approval rating? Because if you look here, when Joe Biden got inaugurated and when she got inaugurated into the vice presidency, her approval rating was not really that bad. It was a little bit above 50%. It was below 50%, but it wasn't super bad like it is right now, 39%. So what happened that caused it to really go down? Well, generally speaking, when a candidate gets into office, their approval rating is very high, and then it starts to go down and down and down due to the familiarity of that candidate by the general public. Although that being said, as you can see here, when the controversy around Mexico's Guatemala's trips and all that in June 8, 2021, again, this is about 6 to 5 months into her vice presidential term, her approval rating began to sink. Now, if you look here, her approval rating began to sink relatively quickly. Although that being said, it did go pretty down, and it's been going down ever since there. Now it's at 39%. It's been in the low 40s for a while, but now it is at low 39%. 39% there. So taking a look here at how Kamala Harris compares to her predecessors with regards to the vice presidency. At this point, if you see here, right now we're in day 1003 of Kamala Harris's vice presidency. Now it says here day 1001. That's because when this article was made, it was actually 2 days ago. But anyways, taking a look here, it'll give you around general trend line of where we're headed. Compared to Vice President Mike Pence, you can see here that Mike Pence had a much higher approval rating than Kamala Harris. Now, the zero here is actually an equilibrium point. When you have a zero, that means basically that you're at 50%. So you have a 50% zero. Basically, you're zero, you have 50% above you, 50% below you. Although Kamala Harris, you can see here, is a little bit below negative 10. A negative 10 approval rating would be like a 40% approval rating, although she's a bit below that. Whereas Vice President Mike Pence was around 45%. If you look here, Joe Biden, when he was vice president, at this point in Joe Biden's vice presidency, Joe Biden's approval rating was almost at 50% as well, whereas Kamala Harris is much lower than Joe Biden here when you look at this. Dick Cheney, who was George W. Bush's vice president, had a much higher approval rating at this point. Al Gore also had an extremely higher approval rating. Now, when Al Gore had a 30% approval rating, that just means that he actually had an 80% approval rating because you add the 30 onto the 50 since zero is your equilibrium for 50%. And now, as you can see here, these are vice presidents who were there a while ago. So Dick Cheney and Al Gore were there in like the 2000s, the early basically in the 1990s. Although as time has gone on, vice presidents have become much less approved by the general public due to the fact that the country has become more partisan. So you can see here Dick Cheney and Al Gore again began their tenures as vice president with higher approval rating than Kamala Harris enjoys. Again, Mike Pence had a higher approval rating than Kamala Harris when he came in. Actually around the same, basically. So yeah. All right, how Harris compares to Biden. So how Harris compares to Biden. Biden, now this is Biden during his presidency. So this is not Biden during vice presidency. So this poll here was Biden during his vice presidency. This poll over here is how Harris as vice president compares to Joe Biden's approval rating currently as president. And a lot of times what you see is that a president and vice president's approval rating are generally around the same. Now, in Al Gore, that was a little bit different, but generally speaking, they were around the same, basically. So taking a look here, Kamala Harris's approval rating was is basically around the same. Joe Biden has a negative 14.2 approval rating. So what that basically means is that he's at 36% approval rating, whereas Kamala Harris is even a little bit lower. Okay, so it's around the same, which is in accordance with precedent. Precedent does show that presidents and vice presidents have a similar approval rating. How different groups view Kamala Harris. This is another extremely important age bracket to go. What are the opinions by Gen Z, millennials, and individuals who are in Gen X or in other individual groups based on their ages? So the individuals under the age of 30. Now, younger individuals tend to be more liberal. I think that's something that everybody basically knows. Younger individuals tend to be more liberal, whereas older individuals tend to be more conservative. Now, that is not a hard, fast rule. There are older people who are extremely liberal and young people who are extremely conservative, but this is just a general idea. So under the age of 30, you can see that Kamala Harris has a 53% approval rating, which would make sense considering the young people are more liberal. Whereas as the ages go higher, you can see how her approval rating dwindles. Individuals who are seniors above the age of 65 have only a 37% approval rating of Kamala Harris. That is not good whatsoever. Although that being said, it does follow the rule that older people are less conservative. That being said, you have age bracket, but you also have individual things within gender, education, party, race. Race is an extremely important factor, considering the fact that Kamala Harris is the first Asian vice president. You have to consider that individuals who are Asian and are Chinese or are black may be more of a preference towards her than other vice presidents, just because of the fact that she's Asian. So taking a look at education, individuals with a high school education or less. So this is like the bare minimum. We would refer to these individuals as uneducated with regards to the fact that they only have a high school education in politics. So that doesn't mean that they're uneducated. You can be educated even if you have a high school degree, but it's just referring in politics uneducated. 38% of people without a high school degree. Because the thing that's important, a person's education normally determines their job. Now, that's not always the case, but an individual with a high school degree or less normally has a minimum wage job or runs a private business. For those people who have a minimum wage job, they only have a 38% approval rating. Individuals who have some college, so a college basically, they dropped out in the first, second, or third year. The college is basically a four-year term. Some college, 42% approval rating. Again, you can see how individuals who have some college may have a better job opportunities than individuals with a full college. So their economic status is obviously in a better position. Individuals who are college graduates have a 44%. Postgraduates, so that means that they studied beyond, their regular four-year degree. They studied beyond that, 48%. Now, gender, individuals with gender. So females have obviously a higher approval rating of Kamala Harris since Kamala Harris is a female. They have a 47% approval rating of Kamala Harris. Although the unfavorability rating is a net negative of 2%. Males have a very low approval rating, 38% approval rating. So that's an interesting phenomenon to note. How race and gender affect and education and age all affect how these different demographic groups will approve or vote for a particular candidate. Now, note that this is approval rating. This does not mean that they're necessarily going to go out and vote. If voting and actually approving someone are two different things. You could approve of a candidate and not actually be that enthusiastic about the candidate in order to go out and vote for them. At the same time, you could disapprove of a candidate but still go out and vote for them just because of the fact that it's of a lesser of two evils and they're the best alternative. So within parties, 83% of Democrats approve of Kamala Harris, which is good, but is not the best, but 83%. Only 11% of Republicans approve of Kamala Harris, which is normally normal when you in our current political climate. That's normal. Independents, only 28%. That's not good. You want to bring in independence to your party. Black, 81% of blacks approve of Kamala Harris, which is not really good considering the fact that, she is in the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party needs black voters, although only 81% approve of her. That being said, only 16% disapprove. The ones that are not either blue or yellow are the ones who basically have no opinion or do not really care to answer. Only 45% of Hispanics approve of Kamala Harris, which is really bad because remember, the Democratic Party needs the non-white base. The non-white base is the base that the Democratic Party needs. They need the white base, although they need the white, college-educated female base. Correct? They need that base. They need the white, college-educated male base, and they also need some college grad, and they also want to go after the high school or less because the Democratic Party wants to present themselves as the party of the working class. And if they don't do that for 2024, and if they don't be more independent, then they have to bring in these two margins. They have to make this 28% go a lot higher. Other who are non-Hispanic, white, or black, 43%. So not good at all whatsoever with regards to the approval rating. Again, I'm just looking at the polls, guys. I try to go strictly off of polling data and off of previous trends that we can see based off of how polling was taken. So those are some things there to be aware of. Now let's get into our math because we went over, that was basically a very in-depth look at where Kamala Harris stands. Now we do not look at state polls. So if you guys can find state polls, try to put that in the comments below. I could not find state polls. I'm really sorry about that, but we have a general idea of where the country is headed. So taking a look here at where we're headed, likely states for the GOP. If Kamala Harris is the nominee, then Iowa, Indiana, and Ohio are likely for the GOP. Trump does very well in those states with regards to the polling data. He does extremely good in Ohio, Indiana, and Iowa. It's extremely good in those states. He obviously won them 2016 and 2020, so I think that he'll win them again for likely. Again, if this was Joe Biden, I might put Ohio as being lean or something, but I'm gonna put it since it's Kamala Harris. I will give it as being likely. Let's go ahead with our next state here. It's the state of Colorado. I'm going to give it as being lean. Now, if it was Joe Biden, I'd give it as being likely. Although that being said, again, Kamala Harris is not as popular as Joe Biden. Again, Kamala Harris came in with a pretty good approval rating. She was generally approved of by the general public. Although, again, with some of her gaffes that she makes occasionally, that go viral sometimes, that isn't very good. When you commit gaffes, it's really just not a good thing. I mean, whether it be Trump or anybody, just try not to commit the gas. The gas are really bad because they really they go viral first of all. And when you commit gas, they're not really a referendum on your policy, correct? It's just a referendum on that you're not good at public speaking or something like that. Okay, so that's what it's a referendum on. But just if you're a politician, just don't commit gas. All right, so next one here. So we're gonna go ahead. New Hampshire is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna give it as being lean. I think that New Hampshire is a state which you consider. I'm not sure New Hampshire is really a swing state anymore. I mean, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden is pretty well ahead of Donald Trump in most of the polls, even now. So I think Kamala Harris would do a similar job. I think she would be a little bit less. Although I'm going to put it as being lean. If Joe Biden was the nominee, I'd probably put it as being likely. Again, guys, if you want to see a Joe Biden versus Trump rematch, please go ahead and look in the link in the description below. That'll be right there in the link in the description below. So taking a look here at some more states here. We have Minnesota. Minnesota, if Kamala Harris is the nominee, I'm going to give it as being tilt. Now, some of you may disagree with me, but I'm going to give it as being tilt. Joe Biden won that by a plus 7 point something margin, but around 7%. But that being said, Minnesota is a state to be looking at and is a state that we really need to be taking a look at as 2024 approaches. Now, if Joe Biden's the nominee, he probably won't have to spend that much time in Minnesota since he did win it by a big margin. Although that being said, if Kamala Harris is the nominee, I do think that she will have to spend a lot of time in Minnesota just securing that state and making sure. Remember, like, Minnesota even voted for Walter Mondale over Ronald Reagan in the Ronald Reagan landslide of 1984, which basically every presidential candidate or president running for re-election would want, but that rarely happens due to the partisan voting blocks that we have on both the right and the left. So taking a look here at some more states here. Virginia, I'm going to go ahead and give it as being tilt. Again, if Kamala Harris is the nominee, I just don't know if Kamala Harris can really pull it together with regards to actually securing these states in a big margin. Joe Biden won Virginia by a 5% margin, although if Kamala Harris is the nominee, she's not doing good in any of the polls. Again, I say this with Nikki Haley and Joe Biden. Nikki Haley blows out Joe Biden in the polls. When it's Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, Trump blows Kamala Harris out in the polls. Whereas when it's Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, that's when you have your equilibrium almost of the fact that both of them are around neck and neck with regards to where they stand in the polls and in the view of the general public. So taking a look here at Texas. Texas, I'm going to be giving it as being likely if Kamala Harris is the nominee. Now, if Joe Biden's the nominee, I'll put it as being lean. Okay, Joe Biden's the nominee, which is why Kamala Harris should not run for president in 2024 if Joe Biden chooses to drop out. Kamala Harris should not run for president. 2028, maybe, due to the fact that as people are removed from the Joe Biden Kamala Harris presidency, then this is assuming that her approval rating goes up. If Joe Biden's reelected in 2024, this would be assuming that her approval rating would go up. Or if Donald Trump were to be elected, then that would be assuming that people would be fed up with Trump, and then her approval rating would go high. Okay, so that's basically where I'm basically getting my data from and inferring them based off of previous elections. So Florida, Florida is extremely important in previous elections, although not very important now. If Kamala Harris is the nominee, I'm going to be putting it as being. I'll put it as likely. I'll put it as likely. I feel like we'll put it as lean, just because of the fact that it wasn't really more towards the right until about 2020. That being said, Democrats do have. I don't really think Democrats have an opportunity because when you look at the polls, I mean, Trump's basically 10 points ahead of Biden. Okay, if he's 10 points ahead of Biden, he's definitely a lot of points above Biden. Okay, you have a high Hispanic, you have a Cuban population in Florida, which, as we saw here in this previous poll here, let me go down a little bit here and take a look. As we saw here, even minorities here do not have a favorable opinion of Kamala Harris. Other than blacks, every single other ethnic minority or ethnic group has a negative net difference for an approval rating of Kamala Harris. So that's going to be extremely important moving forward here. But I'm going to put it as being lean. You can debate. I might put it as being likely. But that being said, we'll just keep it there for now. Now, for one of Maine's districts, I'm going to be putting it as being likely if Kamala Harris is the nominee. That being said, even if Joe Biden's the nominee, I might be putting it as likely since he won that in 2016 and 2020. So I'm going to be giving that as being likely. And again, guys, I'm not saying this from a right or left stance. I'm just trying to be as bipartisan as possible when I make these election predictions because that's what you really want. You want bipartisan in these predictions here. So for the state of Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and one of Maine's congressional districts. These are the districts and the states which I believe will determine the results of the 2024 election, regardless of who the nominee is, because these are the states which are your swing states. These are the real battleground states. Some people might put New Hampshire. Some people might put Florida. Some people might put Texas as being battleground. But what the ones that are not shaded in right now, these are your battleground swing states, which you need to be paying attention for 2024. These are the states which will decide the election, no matter who's the nominee. It could be Ron DeSantis, it could be Kamala Harris, it could be Tulsi Gabbard, it could be Bernie Sanders, it could be anybody. Okay, these are the states which will determine the results of the election. How do I know? Well, because polls are super tight in these states, and because both candidates won these states by slim margins in 2020. And these are going to be important for 2024. So taking a look here, these are extremely important states here. Let's take a look at them. One of Maine's congressional districts. If Maine, I'm going to be putting it as being tilt with regards to one of its congressional districts. Tilt, not lean. Biden did win this by a 6% margin. That being said, I think that Kamala Harris could keep that margin. Omaha is a district within Nebraska, which is inside that congressional district. I believe it might be the second or third or fourth. Although you can go and check back and check me on that. If there's a mistake, I'll try to put that in the comments below. But one of its congressional districts, either way, it's worth only one electoral vote, and it is in Omaha. It's a heavily non-Trump coalition there in Omaha. So taking a look here at some more states here. Wisconsin. If Kamala Harris is the nominee, I'm going to be giving it as being tilt for Donald Trump. I'm also going to be going ahead and giving it Pennsylvania as being tilt. I'm going to be giving Michigan. I'm going to be actually giving Michigan as being tilt Democrat there. So I believe that it will be tilt Democrat. This would Kamala Harris at 241, Trump at 248. I'm also going to go ahead and give North Carolina. Is a state where Donald Trump won both times around. Mitt Romney won that in 2012, if you remember. So I do think he'll win it again, especially in the fact that he won it during the COVID-19 pandemic, in which things were not looking too good for the economy in general. Not the fact that their economy was recovering, but more on the economy as a general whole with regards to the current state at that time, not the actual recovery. So looking at some more states here, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. These are going to be extremely important. Nevada, if Donald Trump's the nominee, I'm going to be giving it as being tilted to him. I'm going to be giving Arizona and Georgia if Kamala Harris is the nominee. Now, that being said, we have Donald Trump here at 297 electoral votes and Kamala Harris at 241 electoral votes. Now, the reason why I gave Georgia and Arizona to Donald Trump is the fact that, remember, Joe Biden only won that state by a very slim margin. That being said, you may say that things have gotten improved for Democrats within the state of Georgia. Now, if it were to be a Biden versus Trump rematch, I might give Georgia to Joe Biden, considering the fact that since 2020, the population that has gone to Georgia has actually been more liberal compared to the Republicans. So that may be a scenario to be looking at. Also, redistricting, as one person pointed out in the comments from my last video, redistricting is going to be huge because we had the 2020 election in which we had a 2020 census in which we had some redistricting that affected the 2022 election. Redistricting is going to be huge. So taking a look here, we have Kamala Harris at 241 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 297. Again, guys, This, I believe, is a good overview of where the country stands with regards to these candidates. Guys, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, guys. Only less than 1% of my viewers, about 1% of my viewers, subscribe to this channel, who actually watch this channel. So do me a quick favor, guys. Just hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I'm just growing, so just help me out a little bit. Just hit that subscribe button and help me out. If you guys disagree with any of these, please write that down in the comment section below. I'll see you guys.